Perhaps nothing defines India as much as its prolific and unique filmmaking tradition does. With its unique blend of high melodrama, music, action, romance, in fact a bit of pretty much everything, the Indian film industry has carved out its own niche and is in fact the only film industry in the world to have withstood the all-powerful onslaught of Hollywood. It has done so against seemingly impossible odds and despite having to contend with censorship.
You will always have, at some stage or the other, you would have come in confrontation with the censor board, and this has happened to me many times. Never has it been so serious except in the case of two films. Of course, the irritating things like, cut this bit of dialogue, remove that word from there, those things have happened to me as a routine. But I've made many films, I've lived many years, so, in the cinema. And these things are bound to happen. But twice it became very serious. One was when I made a film called Nishant, which was actually banned for a while. And then, of course, it had to be seen at the highest level. When I say at the highest level, it had to be seen on the level of the Prime Minister of India to get a clearance. And that was because of the emergency. The censor board was reacting to anything and everything very strongly at the time. And so the film was banned.
Yes, I was, my very third film called Chetna was actually held by the censors for a quite number of days or maybe month or two. And in the film, there were cuts which were absolutely nonsensical. I had used VAT 69 bottle for the drinking. So they said, why VAT 69? I said, why not? Well, no, it is an imported whiskey. So I said, the very Rostock on which the film is shot is imported. So what do you do to that? Finally, they passed the film with A certificate at that time. And my two films were banned, one was Ye Sach Hai, another was Society. Ye Sach Hai was a film on legalization of abortion. My fight was that it is not the problem of a married woman or a weaker, health-wise weaker woman. It is the problem of a young girl, unmarried girl, who has committed a mistake and she goes and commits suicide. So they banned it. And what they said that there are 3 women in the film and all 3 are pregnant. So I said, when you are talking about abortion, there has to be pregnancy.
Well, I have always a good experience with the censor board, but every time I feel one thing, that there should be better quality members of the censor board.
Yeah, I mean, for instance, when I made War and Peace, which is an anti-nuclear film, there is a scene in it in which people who are supporters of the atom bomb, mainly BJP youth, they celebrated the nuclear tests and they cut their own hands a little bit with a blade, and with that blood they signed congratulations letters to Vajpayee. So I filmed that sequence. Censor board said this is too violent, and so they wanted to cut, but they justified it along using the censor board guidelines, saying that too much violence can't be shown. So this little bit of a guy slashing his own, taking a few drops of blood and writing in blood was too violent, but they have people's heads being cut off in Bollywood cinema all the time, and all kinds of violence, as you know.
No, I've never had any kind of intense experience with the censor board for any of my films.
Sometimes you face some very stupid things, and when you argue with them, sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't. In Sholay, they were insistent that Gabbar Singh should not be killed. Now I can understand, not that I feel it is justified, but I can understand if someday you make a law that you will not show murders on the screen. No, obviously it is wrong, but all right, it has some coherence. A film where so many murders are shown anyway, so you say that don't show the murder of the villain in the end. It beats all the logic. But ultimately we had to change the end. So Gabbar Singh did not die in the end. Or in Mr. India, they had suggested some 11 or 12 cuts, because when Mogambo, who is in a way a fictitious character, you can see that he is hardly real.
Mogambo, खुश हुआ।
who is saying that let Indians fight with each other.
ना समझ और जाहिल हिंदुस्तानियों ने अपनी हिस्ट्री, अपने इतिहास से आज तक कुछ नहीं सीखा।
They say, cut this. It's a very wrong suggestion.
उन्हें आपस में लड़ने के लिए जितने हथियार चाहिए, मोगेम्बो देगा।
Imagine then one made them understand that the villain is saying it, and because he's saying all this, he's the villain. So anyway, somehow they understood that, but they can be, I mean, very childish sometimes.
Till today, my no film has been cut. I don't make the no films.
For some, their interaction with the censor board has been a life-altering one. Meet Faiz Anwar, an eminent lyricist who turned producer with his film Chand Bhuj Gaya on the Gujarat riots. The film was completed in record time. However, little did Mr. Anwar know that his troubles had only begun.
मेरा तो बहुत खराब रहा। चांद बुझ गया को लेके जो मेरी फिल्म है उसको लेके मेरा बहुत खराब एक्सपीरियंस रहा, क्योंकि जब मैं अपनी इस फिल्म को लेके कलकत्ता गया सेंसर बोर्ड में, बॉम्बे नहीं ले गया था, ये फिल्म मैंने बनाई तो लोगों ने बोला भाई ये फिल्म है और गुजरात और गोधरा कांड पर बनी है तो शायद बॉम्बे में दिक्कत आए। क्यों? ऐसे दोस्तों ने बोला, बोले आप बेटर है मद्रास या कलकत्ता लेके जाइए आप। तो मैं कलकत्ता ले गया। फिल्म में वहाँ जब सेंसर बोर्ड ने फिल्म देखी तो कुछ लोगों ने मशवरा दिया कि आप इस फिल्म को सिर्फ ट्रेन वाला सीन निकाल के रिप्रेजेंट कीजिए। मैंने ये तो नहीं हो सकता है। बोले से जहाँ पर गोधरा लिखा है स्टेशन पे वहाँ पे आप बिलर कर दीजिए, वापस दे दीजिए रिप्रेजेंट, हम पास कर देंगे। वापस रिवाइजिंग में गई, लोगों ने देखी तो बोले से ट्रेन निकाल दो, नरेंद्र मोदी की शक्ल निकाल दो, जहाँ जहाँ भी नरेंद्र मोदी है। हमारी पूरी फिल्म नरेंद्र मोदी, हमारी फिल्म का जो सीएम है, जो एक कैरेक्टर है प्रताप सिंह, उसका चेहरा नरेंद्र मोदी से मिलता जुलता है। कॉपी आप इसको निकाल दीजिए फिल्म से, ये ट्रेन निकाल दीजिए। तो हमने कहा जब सब कुछ आपके कहने के मुताबिक मैं निकाल दूंगा तो आपको फिल्म दूंगा, आप मुझे काट के टेलर हाथ में दे देंगे। फिर वहाँ से मैं हाई कोर्ट गया। हाई कोर्ट में मुझे विदाउट कट फिल्म हमारी पास हुई। हाई कोर्ट ने इंसाफ किया। हाई कोर्ट ने देखा, उसको लगा कि फिल्म में एक अच्छा मैसेज है। अगर ऐसा नहीं होता तो हाई कोर्ट बगैर करके फिल्म पास नहीं करता।
No film can be publicly screened in India until it gets a censor certificate, and no filmmaker, whether the biggest commercially successful one or one who makes only documentaries, can avoid dealing with the censor board. Let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth. Is censorship required?
हाँ, जरूरत तो है।
Yes, it is required. Not at all. Definitely not.
There should be censorship, but it should be only to categorize the content.
I personally would like to see a stage when there is no censor board.
Censorship is important.
I have never believed that censorship is required.
Yes, it is required.
Censorship by any state regulatory body is not required.
Film censor is required always.
Censorship should go.
Right now, censors should not be removed.
Basically, as an artist, I don't agree on that thing. But as a person from this country, from India, I would love to have a little bit of censor, because we believe in certain kind of principles, certain kind of qualities of living and everything.
I would, left to myself, not be happy about censorship.
Clearly, the jury is divided over the question. It is also one that cannot be answered by a mere yes or no. What then is the case for and against censorship?
It is as important as putting up a lock on your bag while traveling and putting up a lock when you are going out of the house. Lock is meant for the gentle people, the gentleman, that this house is locked, I should not enter here. Thief is otherwise going to break it and steal the things, right? But it is a sign that this is a locked thing, this is somebody's thing. So this should not be, attacked, or it should not be entered there.
In the garb of being the guardians of morality and proclaiming that absence of censorship would mean a lot of obscenity, vulgarity, and decadence of values and so on, they are creating a situation where a lot of politically and socially conscious films and documentaries are not seeing the day of the light. Actually, they are more concerned with that. Somehow, I mean, films like Kachchi Kali or Bikhri Jawani and whatever, these films ultimately reach the theatre, whether they are adult movies or they are censored or whatever. But where censor really comes heavily, and you can see that it means business, is films which have any political message.
While people on both sides of the divide seem convinced about their stands, what seems to be at the heart of the dilemma is the effect, detrimental or otherwise, that a film has on the mind of the person watching it. It becomes pertinent thus to understand what impact do films really have on the public psyche.
Yeah, of course, films have a huge impact on. I do believe films have an impact on the society, and that's exactly why I make films. That's why I want to. I mean, film is a communication process.
I do agree. I mean, because after all, film is unlike a book, or film is something else, because it is a social art, and it is a means of mass communication. In other words, it communicates itself to very large numbers of people at any given time, and therefore there is a great power that it has, both of persuasion and in fact of manipulation as well.
I don't believe it at all. Ramayana has been there since many centuries. Mahabharata has been there since many centuries. Have you met a Ram? Have you met a Lakshman? Have you met a Bharat? Have you met a Arjun? Have you met a Yudhishthir? If they cannot influence, how films can influence? It's a momentary thing, you know. You go to a film, you see a film, enjoy yourself and come out.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I strongly believe in that film does have a very strong impact on human psychic. And whatever is shown, in fact, in movies and television, you know, young people are aping that, and they are kind of getting more aware of, you know, what exactly is happening in today's society. So it is, in fact, creating a very big impact.
I'm sure that films do have influence, because they draw from the society and they give back to the society.
As society has impact on films, films have impact on society. This is definitely a thing. People, especially the people who are impressionable age, they get definitely very much influenced by the films. Otherwise, our films won't do so well.
Even if it is assumed that films have an impact on the public psyche, and therefore have to be censored to ensure that this impact is not detrimental, how effective has the censor board been in its avowed goal of upholding the public taste and morality? How objective and competent is it really?
And there was a time when the censor board used to almost go by the number of minutes of this that was being shown. So they would, if there was a whole sequence of about, say, 4 minutes, they would cut it to 2 minutes. Now, when they did that, it became a cat and mouse game between film producers and the censor board. So they would say, all right, if I have 4 minutes, they're going to cut 2 minutes. If I have 8 minutes, they will cut 4 minutes. So let's shoot 8 minutes and show it to them.
Sometimes they say, you can't show anybody smoking on the screen. Why? People smoke.